Okay, here is an experiment to try. Hold on. So we've sort of already covered this topic from different angles maybe, but now we're going to look at it from this angle, okay? And I'm just sort of documenting how I see things now that I feel like, I guess you could call it the matrix. My matrix is like loosening up or falling apart or, something like that. So first of all, I noticed that there's this 100th monkey effect. The 100th monkey effect is this concept where when a certain number of monkeys were informed of a new way of doing something or informed of some danger, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but then they all knew. Like only so many of them had to be directly given the knowledge, and then they all knew. Okay, it's like a tipping point, right, where reality shifts to the predominant known thing. So in the case of the 100th monkey effect, I think it's like, I've heard another statistic, someone who was doing a TED talk. I don't know who these people are that did these experiments. Okay, I'm just telling you what comes to mind in order to help me explain this in case you know of these experiments. Okay, but this particular TED talk dude said that we have a revolution as soon as 51% of the population is informed. So I see it like a tipping point, right? And as within, so without. So whereas we see that in the world, and this is the concept that we've understood as being existence outside of us, it's actually also inside of us. So once you've gotten to know a certain amount, a certain percentage of yourself, of your shadow, of your psyche, it's like the 100th monkey effect. And the way I noticed this in myself was enough of me got on board with the understanding, excuse me, that there is always a solution. And once I did that, it's like this. So this major situation came up in my life where I needed to start like looking for some solutions. And it took me a moment, right? Because at first I was like, and then I was like, okay, solutions. Went to the solutions and kind of just like opened myself hard to solutions because I really didn't know. I had already failed at this particular issue before in my life, so I didn't really know what the solution was. But I had the wherewithal to ask this time. And I asked, I said, what is the solution? I know there's a solution. Please show it to me. Well, I believe that was like the 100th monkey effect for my psyche and my cells and my being, because all of a sudden a bunch of solutions came in for other problems that I had on a back burner. For instance, for a while in my trailer, I've had this situation where I would blow the breaker in the box if I was cooking at the same time as having heat on, and so I had to adapt to just unplugging my heat when I cook, which was inconvenient in some of the winter mornings. So if I wanted coffee, it was like, okay, warm coffee, but go without heat while you make it. Those kind of things. So whatever, it's not, too big of a deal. I could adapt. And I did for all this time. And I'm talking, all this time meaning 4 years. And then so I had tipped the scales and looking for solutions in my energy. And then we had this like storm, and there's a very high wind. And this brings into the fact that like the elements we're working with the elements, right? Earth, wind, air, and fire. So like the elements are brought into these solutions at times, right? And so we had this windstorm and it knocked our power out, and it caused the power to surge, right? When whatever happened on the lines out there, and it wasn't just my power. but the whole town's power went out. This was last week or whatever, we had a storm. So as a result, like, my power was restored and everything, but as a result, like, the GFIs and the fuses kept blowing in my house afterwards. Like, I didn't know why. I didn't know what was happening. I thought maybe it was like water damaged or like, I didn't know. But I called my landlord and they had an electrician come. The electrician came within half an hour of receiving the call. I mean, we didn't know if it would take days or whatever, you know. And then he fixed the issue within an hour. He had to run, and that's including the time it took him to run to the town to get the part. He expanded the capacity for my trailer to run electricity, and now I can cook and have heat at the same time. Simultaneously, okay, so while the electricity was out in the trailer, actually my internet modem is situated on my porch. And the porch is wired differently than the trailer. And the porch never lost power. So even while I was out of power for the issue after the town-wide power outage was restored and my trailer was particularly having issues, I still had power because I was able to run an extension cord from my porch into the house. So I didn't go without at all at any time. Plus the internet stayed on because the modem was always out there, plugged in out there. But once the electricity was all resolved and everything, I noticed that the internet kept going out. So I would call and then they would try to, run some whatever codes to the modem, and then it wouldn't go back on. But then a little while later it went back on. Like, just even after they scheduled a technician. So it went back on and I canceled the technician. But then it went out again the next day. So I called them back, and then they said, this time, if it goes back on, just don't cancel the technician, because you can cancel it through the text message they send you. And I said, okay. So it did go back on, and then I still didn't cancel the technician. So the technician came, and he actually went up the pole, and he said that there was something broken on the pole, and he came in to do a speed test on my laptop afterwards, after he repaired it. And the speeds had gone up significantly to what I generally have had for the past 4 years when I lived here. You may have heard me talk about how the upload speeds have been very slow for me. When I do these videos, it takes a while for them to upload. Well, that probably won't be the case anymore. We'll see after this one, but it's definitely improved because I noticed, because I had done speed tests a while ago, like years ago, and last year probably, and earlier in this year, just always like looking to see like, what the heck. But anyway, now it's fixed. And so here's just an example of how, like, I had a tipping point with solutions, like solutions for issues that I hadn't even been focused on in a while, because I didn't even know there was a solution for it, because I had thought I had tried everything, So I was no longer looking at it. I was no longer trying to solve it, but the solutions came in just because I had that tipping point in my energy body, where more of my energy body was like on board with, yeah, there's always a solution. I didn't have to and how I got to that point was teaching all the parts of myself that there's always a solution. And this means over the years, just switching to growth mindset anywhere that I noticed I didn't have it, right? Switching out of victim consciousness and all of that stuff over time. So because I have been in the process of switching over from victim consciousness and lack consciousness into growth-oriented and solution-oriented mentalities, I've been well trained on taking that moment, sure, to process whatever's going on, but then my mind will go towards, okay, what's the solution? And that's as I face anything, right? On a day-to-day basis. But because of that, I'm not in the habit of like spending time complaining or like, telling everybody about the troubles or the challenges I have. I'm much more inclined to just face the challenge, go towards it, and like look for the solution to it. And interestingly, in the past maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, I've had a few people, 3 people, invite me to vent to them. So these were people, they did it for various reasons, ranging from like just being nosy and wanting to know what's going on in my life to wanting me to know that I was supported by them, and maybe, stemming from their want to have somebody to vent to. Not sure exactly, it ranges probably for each person, but I noticed it as a pattern. I'm like, here's people inviting me to vent, but I don't vent. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, why don't I vent? And I was like, well, because I don't see the point in it. It's a waste of time, and it puts energy towards the story that you don't want to live out. So logically, it doesn't make sense to vent. And emotionally, I don't feel the need to vent anymore. I did in the beginning, a long time ago when I was backlogged and overwhelmed. But that's not been the case for a while now. So since I'm not backlogged and overwhelmed with anything that I encounter, emotions don't overwhelm me or anything, because they go right through me. An emotion is just a wave of energy bringing in what can be interpreted as a feeling if I assign a story to it. So I'm not in the habit of grabbing onto those and assigning stories to them. I take them as pieces of information, right? So like if a wave of energy carries in a piece of information, maybe about my relating with somebody else or whatever it is, like I take that information, but like I'm not inclined to like make it a whole story and mean something about me and take it personal or anything like that, right? And an emotion, a feeling is something I can indulge in if I want to, certainly. And the good ones I certainly do. Like I'll sit there and let myself feel true adoration and joy for things like giving my granddaughter this little toy and her just being like, oh, thanks, Juju. um, and just like I'll healthily indulge in any feeling that I want to, but I know that feelings aren't me. They're just experiences I'm having, or they're data points that I'm gathering or learning from. You know what I mean? So to me, there's no reason or need to vent. And then I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I should do a video on the process of being a person who needed to vent and to becoming this version of myself who doesn't have the need to vent. It's not like something I'm holding myself back from. It's just something that's not needed. And if it was, then I would do it. And I encourage people to do it if they feel they need it. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. It was just that I noticed a contrast and a difference, a place where I had evolved. And so I decided, oh, maybe this is worth sharing, right? And then I didn't I didn't make a video that I wanted to post on that. I was kind of putting it off, and that night, which was last night, I guess, in my YouTube feed, I have subscribed to someone called Healthy Gamer GG, and if you've been watching my videos, that you may have heard me reference his videos before, and highly recommend checking out a bunch of his videos, because if you're called to any of them, they're very well done and very informative and helpful. And he's a psychiatrist, so he's talking about those kind of things. And so anyway, he put out a video. I haven't watched it or anything, but it says why. The title of it says why you should never vent. I was like, oh, look, the solution is already there, right? Like I wanted to put the solution out. I was gonna record a video talking about it, and instead the universe like popped in the solution right for me through Healthy Gamer GG, who's probably much more qualified to talk about the topic, definitely has a bigger audience, but I just thought it was kind of funny and a little wink from the universe, like, we got you covered, don't you worry about that. But basically the thing about venting, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I understand that it does help to sometimes talk about it and really like unload it, because you can see yourself through your own words, right? It's no longer like festering inside of you. Now it's outside of you. And you may even see it off the reflection of someone else. Which brings me to the whole point of this video, which is that I wanted to share this as an experiment. So what I've come to and realized is that every single thing is a reflection of me, which we've talked about that from other angles before. You know that I've talked about using the mirror concept in order to heal and to become self-aware and all and like unravel shadows and, you know, acknowledge them and become aware of patterns and take back projections and all that, right? But in actuality, I was thinking, okay, well, what if you just implement into the operating system, like any single thing, anything that I see outside of me, I can ask the question, what is that showing me from within myself? What is that showing me from within that is within myself? What is that correlating to within my psyche? What is that correlating to within my subconscious? And you can pick anything. And I would challenge you to pick the things that make you the most uncomfortable. And by doing this, nothing can really harm you. You take back all your power for anything to make you a victim, because any single thing that you're viewing, you're owning it as yours. And if you own that thing, that means you can change that thing, right? And if not actually physically change it, right? Like, because I didn't know how to do the electricity in my home. I didn't know how to rewire things and stuff like that. But there was a solution for that. And because a solution was allowed, that could come in. So all you have to do is shift your mindset to ask for both allow and ask for a solution on anything. Imagine if we all did this on the things that I'm going to use air quotes, hate the most. If we all just owned it as ours and took responsibility for it, for solving it, the thing that's in front of you. There would be no time to sit around complaining about things. You'd be busy, right? I've been busy. So some of the, darkest things that we project onto other people or we perceive outside of ourselves, let's take something like this. Let's take an example of seeing somebody who's homeless. You see somebody who's homeless and you feel a certain way, or maybe you ignore it, or whatever, however your way of handling that situation is, it's still correlating to something within you. So if I were to look at somebody homeless, maybe, in me, like I would say, okay, this is a reflection of me. What is this showing? What is this showing me about me? And it's like, okay, if you have like some sort of disgust for people who are homeless because they may be dirty, or, if you feel bad, if you feel like responsible for it, or if you feel hopeless or helpless, these are all things that you can become aware of within yourself. And then imagine then if you take it to the next step and ask, what is the solution? What is the solution for me seeing somebody who is homeless, who I perceive is whatever your story is about that? For me, I think one of the biggest difficulties is like I would want to make sure that the person who I see as being homeless felt seen and valued as a human, and felt like they knew that they matter. But what would hold me back with that is that I would feel inhibited to give them a hug or hold their hand or stuff like that, because if they were very dirty, I particularly have an aversion to that, and smells and odors and things like that. And like, you may not know this, but I used to be very, very, very OCD about germs. But I wouldn't call myself OCD anymore, but I'm definitely conscious of hand washing and things like that. And so if I looked at a homeless person and I thought, And then and I acknowledge the part of me that's going, ew, I cannot hug this person because they will contaminate me. What is that showing me about my psyche? And then I can trace it back in. It's like, okay, well, where is it in me that I have this feeling that I will be contaminated, and that's more important, because you'll do what's important to you, right? And I've somehow made it more important to protect myself from a germ than to make a human know that they are loved, or to offer my love to a human, I should say, because I can't make anyone feel anything, right? And then if I look at it like that, it's like, which is more important? Is it more important in this moment, in this instance? Because I do have to be discerning. There are times where it's not going to be as important for me to show someone my love as it is for me to protect myself. That's going to be a valid thing sometimes. But is it in this instance, right? And then look at self. And it's like seeing homeless people, it could be tied to, like, can you ever remember the first time you ever learned that there were homeless people in the world? Like, say you were a child and you saw somebody homeless, and like you asked your parents what was up with it, you know? Like, however you felt in that moment was bound to be very overwhelming, and you may not have had what it took to process something like that, and information learning that's like some people had to go without a common, I mean, a human need of shelter. And or that some people didn't have what it took to keep themselves sheltered, and that other people were just okay with that nothing was going to be done about that. And how does that make you feel in the world, right, as a child when you're learning this for the first time? Like, there may be some buried subconscious things in there that you've been and maybe that's why you might be a person who just overlooks a homeless person, who just turns the other cheek and says, I can't even look at that. I'm not even looking at that. And maybe it's because inside you is buried this whole story about how you felt when you first learned that was something that could actually be happening here. You know? It's like, what is this situation or person reflecting in you? What is it showing you about you? Where is that thing in you? Where is what you see outside of you in you? This can go for clutter in your house. Let's say, I don't know, I guess I'm going to use this as an example. So this is the little doll set that I gave my granddaughter, and then she forgot it here. I didn't have any of these thoughts, but what if I thought to myself, oh, she's so ungrateful, she didn't even care to bring this home with her. Now it's cluttering up my house, right? And maybe because I was trained that way when I was growing up, that that I needed to be like very responsible for all my belongings, and show my gratitude for gifts that I receive. And, you know, maybe I was trained into thinking that it meant something about me if I didn't do that. And so now I'm projecting onto her that it means something about her if she doesn't do that. So when I look at that situation and I have a story about it, then I can trace that back into me. So my example is that by looking at that, if I have a story of anything about that, I can look within myself and show me, what is that showing me about me? Any experience, even violent people, even people who we perceive to be causing us harm, or attacking us, or being unfair, or name calling. Like, I have shared before the story about how I had grown up in violence, and then that I had to heal being in the presence of violence in myself. And then when I did that, I wasn't in the presence of violence anymore. Meaning people around me weren't actually trying to fight with each other or with me anymore in front of me, because that was no longer in my holographic existence here. It was no longer needed to show me something about me. So if you think about your life right now, and you think everything that you see, everything that you're experiencing is showing you something about you. And it could be overwhelming, so you take one thing at a time, the thing that's in front of you. right? So recently I was faced with a situation where I needed to start getting along with somebody who I had always had difficulty getting along with. If you looked at our astrology charts, you would see there's a square in there. And that squares represent tension in the chart. That square had been really rearing its head despite my really, really trying, you know? But at the same time, what it came down to, I realized is, okay, so there are certain things that this person does that it feels like it breaks my boundaries. It feels like I don't want that in my life. Yet this person is in my life. And I don't want the thing that they do in my life. So I had to look at that and I had to own it and take responsibility for it. And I went, okay, well, I don't like this thing this person does, but this person is in my life. They're not going out of my life. And no matter how many times I've expressed that I don't like this thing that they do, no matter how many times I've asked them not to do the thing they do, they still are doing the thing that they do. So there must be something within them that doesn't allow them to adjust it or care about adjusting it or want to adjust it or understand where I'm coming from. And that could be due to my way of communicating it, right? It very well could be. So I had to open myself to that and go, okay, if there's another way, even though I've been trying for years, if there's another way I can communicate this, I'm willing to find it. I'm willing to be open to it. And then I was like, oh yeah, there is a solution for this. And I've opened myself back up to, there is a solution. And immediately things shifted. It just got easier. And even if the behavior was adapting from the other person, and even when the other person didn't forgot to adapt it or whatever, it didn't feel as much of an assault on me. It was like I owned this as part of my experience that there is a solution for. So when it became part of my experience that there's a solution for, it no longer felt like it was victimizing me. And do you see how that would be a much different feeling? And so, and energetically, that person can also respond to the fact that, like, I'm open to a solution here. I'm not just trying to tell you that you're a jerk. I'm not just trying to tell you that I hate you or I hate your behavior. I'm actually open to the fact that there's a solution, and maybe it's something I can do and maybe it's something you can do. Whatever it is, I'm willing. And you can just know when I say that how that would feel so much different, those two stances, and how you would respond differently to somebody in those two different vibrations, you know? All right, just some thoughts. Maybe I could go on with some other examples, but I don't think I need to. I think you probably get the point. What do you think of this? Is this a program or like an operating system that you would adopt to try to help you get to know yourself? Because that's really what you're doing. It's getting to know yourself, because this life is your creation. And you created some of these things, and some of these things are created because you knew it was going to be difficult to work through them. And it brings me back to this question I've been asking myself when I face a challenge, and that is, what could the advantage of this be? Like when the power went out, what could the advantage of this be? Wow, look what the advantage of it was. That my electricity situation that had been going on for 4 years, overloading my circuits, is solved. Huh. What could the advantage of this be? Whatever it is, there is one.